Welcome back to High School Backups Podcast. My name is Jake. I'm here with Kyle and Nick, and we're here to talk about the top three quarterbacks in this year's draft class, 2023 quarterback class. We're talking about Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Will Levis today. And as always, like, subscribe, go follow the socials for more High School Backups on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I think, guys, we just start with Bryce Young, QB1 on most boards. Mel Kiper actually had him, I think, as QB2 or 3 because he had Will Levis at 1. In my personal opinion, it's very close, but it goes Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis. I've watched the tape on all three. I'm getting to Anthony Richardson next. But in my opinion, Bryce Young is just slightly better than the other two. And I mean, the margin's thin. I think any one of these three guys that you pick up, you're probably going to get a good one as long as you develop them correctly. With Bryce Young, I mean, I've watched a lot of tape, like a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. And honestly, I see him as a more athletic Drew Brees. That's my NFL comp for Bryce Young. He's 6 foot, 194 pounds. Obviously, the frame concerns you. The biggest strengths for Bryce Young, he has the NFL arm. It's not the greatest arm in the world, but it sideline to sideline can make all the throws. His accuracy is absolutely wonderful. He's got great pocket presence and escapability. Honestly, his escapability is probably his greatest asset. I see him get out of tight spots all the time. That Alabama offensive line this year just was not good. It wasn't. He's under pressure constantly. He's a great timing thrower. But again, the biggest weakness is that frame, and that's what concerns me. You're talking about his willingness to take big hits is also concerning because of his frame. Like, if he's Will Levis, it's not as concerning, but when you watch the tape, Bryce Young takes a lot of hits. And that's the biggest weakness that I look at right now. I really like Bryce Young. If he's 2 or 3 inches taller and 10 to 15 pounds heavier, bona fide number one quarterback in this class. But I'm looking at a 6 foot, 194 pound guy that I think, you know, plays like Drew Brees, but has the athleticism of a Russell Wilson, where if he's going to get out of the pocket, you can do that. But you're really worried about him taking hits because Russell Wilson is 5'11, 220. You're not worried about him taking the shots. What are your guys' thoughts on Bryce Young?
Go ahead, Kyle.
Am I going first? All
Go
right.
ahead, Kyle.
Um, I I'm genuinely surprised Mel Kiper put Will Levis above him.
Yeah, me too.
Um, don't know what that thought process is because Bryce Young is, to me, the clear number one quarterback in this class. And I know you said, Jake, it's really close.
Yeah.
To me, it's not.
Okay.
Like I look at Bryce Young and I just think he is the package for any team looking to get a quarterback. He has all the abilities that you look for, and you said like his biggest weakness was getting knocked down, and sometimes that's just the way things go, and it's tough when you don't have the team around you to make you succeed. But he was able to not let that affect him this year. Like Alabama was not the best team this year, and they almost made the college football playoffs still on that. And I think you can have him take a lot of that credit because he, to me, really was that star quarterback that you're looking for. And I don't know. I just did not give him that full credit that Mel Kiper is totally ignoring. To me, is absolutely insane. Like I don't know what he's doing.
And I see your point, Kyle. Let me reframe. Like, his biggest weakness isn't the hits specifically. It's his frame combined with a willingness to take hits. So if
Okay.
he's even if he's 15 pounds heavier, right? Like, he's 210, he's 6 foot 210, you're less concerned about it because he's more built. Like, if you look at guys like, again, I'm going to go with Russell Wilson because I think it's the most comparable, like, height-wise. Russell Wilson is 5'11", 220. So 220 pounds, you're not, might be 215. I forget how much Russell Wilson weighs. But, like, you're not worried about Russell Wilson taking hits because he's got kind of a build to him where it's built kind of like a running back. Whereas with Bryce Young, he's built kind of like a skinny receiver. And that's where the concern comes in. It's not the fact that he takes hits. It's the fact that he is smaller and he takes hits. Everything else, I mean, Bryce Young is clutch. We saw it in the Tennessee game, even though they lost that game. We saw it in the Texas game where they should have lost, and Bryce Young just willed them to victory. He's got an it factor closer to Tom Brady than anybody else in this class at the very least. So to reframe my concerns with Bryce Young, and this could drop him down a couple of people's boards because he's 6'1", 194. I don't necessarily think that's the most founded rationale for him dropping, but that's the only concern I can find. And honestly, I think NFL teams are going to be worried about it. To reframe, it's the frame combined with the fact that he's willing to take hits. Nick, what are your thoughts on Bryce Young?
Well, I think realistically, I've been thinking about it, and I think where they play matters a lot more than what people like to talk about.
Yeah.
There are occasional times where that doesn't matter as much, Josh Allen being one. But when you play at Alabama, you know that you've been coached the right way for the last
That's
4 years, or however many years, 3
Three,
years.
I think.
Three. And so for that reason alone, I think that he's coachable. Now, when I think of someone like Kyler Murray, who is also comparable in terms of what his issues might be,
Yep.
Kyler Murray avoids hits at all costs. Literally at all
Yeah, he
costs.
does.
Stay away from everything. And here in the difference on the other side is Josh Allen will take hits at all costs, even if it seems like he could get plowed like Bledsoe. For that reason, if Bryce Young wants to go and get a little frisky, I don't think it's worth it to him. However, his mind's telling him to do it, and Josh Allen hasn't learned yet. On the fuck around graph, Josh Allen likes to play around the 9-10 area. Kyler Murray's around the 1-2 area. Okay, so the problem is Josh Allen still hasn't hit that
he hasn't hit
graph line.
He hasn't hit the find out part of the graph.
Yeah,
line
he
yet.
hasn't hit the find out part of the graph line just yet, but he is fucking around between a 9 and 10. But the problem with that is that once he finds out, it's gonna be at a 9 or a 10. That's the issue. And so if the issue with the difference between him and Bryce Young is Bryce Young's fuck around graph is about 3 times bigger. So Bryce Young's fucking around between 27 and 30 right now. And his find out will be
dramatically worse.
30. So that's my worrisome when it comes to a smaller guy playing like a big dude.
Yeah.
That's the big issue for me.
Honestly, if we're playing on the fuck around and find out graph, right? You're talking like Bryce Young isn't necessarily up where Josh Allen is, but Josh Allen has the leeway at 6'5", 240 to play the fuck around game. Bryce Young is playing at like a 6'7" fuck around. And I mean, and a lot of it isn't necessarily on him. It's the fact that, Alabama's offensive line was absolutely fucking atrocious. Every time Bryce Young drops back, it seems like he's under pressure. And so, honestly, I mean, at some point, especially in the NFL, if you continue to take shots like that, I mean, I think he's going to be coachable enough to figure out how to slide. It's also the thing about Bryce Young that concerns me is that it doesn't look like he knows how to slide yet. Sometimes when he goes to slide, it's really awkward. It's a little weird. And I think that opens your knees up to being a little susceptible. So Bryce Young's going to need to go practice with a baseball coach and actually figure out how to slide. That's how they teach NFL quarterbacks how to slide, by the way. They hire baseball coaches to teach them if you didn't know that.
That's a cool fun fact.
And so
which makes sense.
Yeah.
Think about it.
And so he's going to go have to practice with the baseball coach, figure out how to slide, do all those things.
That's why Kyler's so good at it.
Yes.
Dude, we've literally seen Kyler literally glide.
Literally. And I mean, what happened with Kyler Murray this past season had nothing to do with his slide ability. He was actually going to fake out a defender and try to get by him, and his knee just gave out. Kyler Murray is one of the best sliders in the NFL, if you did not know that. And if Bryce Young can get to Kyler Murray's level of slide while also being a little more aggressive, I think that's going to be very, very good for him. Because Nick mentioned Drew Bledsoe, I'm actually going to move to Will Levis before we talk about CJ Stroud, because honestly, Mel Kiper putting Will Levis at 1 is absolutely ridiculous. I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to get out ahead of the curve and, make a splash and talk about how Will Levis is Josh Allen. I don't see that.
He likes athletic freaks, by the way.
Yeah. And Will Levis is by any means an athletic freak. If you watch the tape, his arm pops off. I mean, I was watching, I think it was the Miami-Ohio game, of all things. I wanted to see how Will Levis played to, comparatively to Kentucky, they're closer to Miami, Ohio than they are of anybody in the SEC, except for maybe Vanderbilt. So I was looking at, comparable talent, and the Miami, Ohio game was really good. And one of the announcers simply just said, I haven't seen the ball come off somebody's hand like the way it come off Will Levis's since Drew Bledsoe. And, as I watched more, I saw it. I kept seeing it. I went back and watched the Drew Bledsoe tape, and I was like, yep, it's there. So with Will Levis and Mel Kiper, I understand what he's trying to do, and I see why he thinks he's number one. Kentucky doesn't have the talent even comparable to Alabama. Like, Alabama still had talent. They just weren't as good as the Georgias and the defensive talent of the Floridas of the world. Whereas in past years, they've had Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Amari Cooper, Julio Jones. Alabama's actually been like wide receiver U very sneakily.
Yeah. Yes.
Jerry Jeudy too.
Really, but yeah.
I mean, you put an LSU in there and Ohio State, and it is like those three programs have generated NFL wide receivers for the last 2 decades at a ridiculous clip. But Will Levis looks a lot like Drew Bledsoe to me, and we're going to talk about the top fits for all of these guys too. I've come up with some that I think are really good for them. Will Levis is 6'3", 232 pounds. Drew Bledsoe is 6'5", 6'4", 240. So I really like the comp there. Again, he's quarterback 3 on my board, but it's very close to Stroud at 2, and Stroud is close to Bryce at 1. So the margin here isn't as large as I think you think it is, Kyle. I'm going to reevaluate this as we get closer to the NFL draft and we get the combine and we get all that stuff and look at actually what it looks like. Because I think CJ Stroud is going to test better than people think he's going to. I don't think any of these guys are perfect, mind you. But at the very least, he's top 3. And so we're looking at, the strength. Supposedly, he's a great leader. I think that's something that you can't quantify. If you're talking about leadership in an NFL locker room and you've got your quarterback who is that guy, that is something to be said. Whereas when we're talking about CJ Stroud, we're going to get into it. He's supposedly either a non-vocal leader or a not great leader, and I want to talk about that. Will Levis's arm strength is elite. It is up there with the Josh Allens of the world, the Drew Bledsoes of the world. He's also incredibly hard to bring down in the pocket. It reminds me a lot of Ben Roethlisberger and, again, Drew Bledsoe, who were incredibly tough to tackle in the pocket. They weren't easy to bring down. They had defenders bouncing off of them left and right. He's got an NFL frame. He's athletic enough to make defenses worry. He can scramble, get out of the pocket, pick you up a first down, which is always a benefit to have in the NFL. I don't think he's going to be, Justin Fields rushing for 1,000 yards, but he's good enough to pick up 500, 600 yards on the ground, which adds to your team, adds to threats. And he makes good throws from the pocket pretty consistently, I would say. His accuracy from the pocket is pretty good. It's not CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, but it's good. It is iffy at times, and he's not the best decision maker, especially when under pressure. The ball will sail on deep throws, especially when he tries to fit it into tight windows. It leads to interceptions. And he trusts his arm maybe a little too much. And, it's an old adage about Josh Allen coming into the league, trusting his arm a little too much. And we saw for the first 2 years that was true. Patrick Mahomes trusts his arm a little too much sometimes. I mean, not Drew Bledsoe trusts his arm a little too much sometimes, led to picks. I think Drew Bledsoe had a 3 or 4 interception game on multiple occasions. But I genuinely really like Will Levis as a quarterback prospect. Again, I'm going to make the comparison to Drew Bledsoe. A lot of people want to compare him to Josh Allen. I don't think that's the right comparison. I think Josh Allen's arm is a little bit stronger. I think Josh Allen is a little more athletic. He's taller. And Josh Allen plays a little more reckless than Will Levis does. I was surprised to see that Will Levis played it a little more safely than Josh Allen. And again, I think the perfect comp is Drew Bledsoe. Would love to hear what you guys think about it.
Love to. I think my actual comp to this right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys take this as you will. As of right now, not in retrospect. As of right now, I think the actual comp is Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones.
Really?
I genuinely
Wow.
they have a similar build.
Okay.
The recklessness, although is not as much there, was there for Daniel Jones. He used to throw a lot of needless balls, and his wide receivers would drop them. And I think the fact that their build is very similar, and I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head, but
I think Daniel Jones is 6'5", 230, something like that, so he's a couple inches taller.
And I think about like needing a good coach to build them up, and Daniel Jones needed that because having 38 fumbles or whatever in 2 years or whatever gross number it was egregious, and he needed a good maybe it's 38 turnovers, but it was absolutely gross whatever it was. And he needed a good coach who I give 98% of the credit to on that team, other than the 2% that goes to Saquon. Genuinely, that's how I feel about Will Levis.
Hold on, Jake.
Go ahead, Kyle. I'm going to address it later, but go ahead, Kyle.
He is really trying to bait me into speaking about this, and I'm not falling for it yet. We will discuss this tomorrow night on our show. So stop trying to bait me, Nicholas. It's not working. It's close to working, but it's not working.
It's an actual comparison, though, because we're talking about the same things. He has a good athletic frame.
I was just going to get to that with the actual comparison.
He has a good athletic frame. Daniel Jones. He needs to be coached up. Daniel Jones need to be coached up. We obviously saw how much better he was this year with a guy who built up Josh Allen, by the way, Brian Dable did, and now he came over and built up Daniel Jones. We're talking about a little bit of recklessness turnover-wise.
Hold on, Jake. I just have a fun Brian Daboll fact. Did anybody know that he was the tight ends coach of the Patriots?
Yeah, I did know that.
I
didn't know that until like 2 days ago. I just thought that was really fun.
They missed out.
All right, Kyle, go ahead.
So, like, in regards to the comparison, I don't think it's entirely wrong, but I also don't think it's entirely right, because I think Will Levis has a little bit higher
ceiling.
I don't know what. Yeah, I guess ceiling is what I'm looking. I'm not sure what word I'm really looking for there, but I think Will Levis, like when you looked at Daniel Jones coming out of college, he wasn't. He was definitely seen as a top prospect, but he wasn't necessarily the top third prospect when you looked at it. Like what Will Levis is, to me, there's 3 top quarterbacks that you're looking at. When you look at Daniel Jones's year, I if I'm not remembering correctly, I don't think he was the third.
He was number 2, but it was Dwayne Haskins and him, and it was that class was more comparable to last year's class, where it was like Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis kind of thing.
Yeah.
What I will say is Daniel Jones, his brain is what got him to being more of a top pick, whereas Will Levis has I'm not going to say a significantly better arm, but the ball comes off.
You can say that. You're not
the ball comes off a lot faster, and there's more velocity behind it, and he can throw deeper than Daniel Jones. Like I don't think the comparison's necessarily far off. I don't think it's the best one. Again, I think the Drew Bledsoe comparison is probably the best one. If you're looking at, a current NFL quarterback, I guess you could say he's Daniel Jones with a better arm and less of a
like Drew Bledsoe.
Less of a brain. Like Will Levis's football IQ isn't as good as Daniel Jones's it was coming out. You got to remember Daniel Jones went to Duke, incredibly smart. Was an Eli Manning protege. And again, like I get where you're coming from, but I don't necessarily think it's like the most accurate. Kyle, go ahead and continue with your point. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just saying, like, I'm not sure what words I'm trying to say, but like to me comparing Daniel Jones and Will Levis is not entirely on the same plane. Like they're close to being on the same plane because like I can see the comparisons Nick's making. It is very similar when you think about it because like he said, Daniel Jones did need that coach to get him to where he is because without that quality coach, Daniel Jones wasn't amazing. But so like to say that, I get what he's saying, but like I guess I needed a little bit more comparison from Nick to really understand where he's going with it, I guess.
I also agree with Nick's take that Will Levis is going to need more coaching than the other two. I think that's absolutely a fact. Will Levis is going to have to find the right situation, and I don't necessarily think he goes to the right situation. Again, we're going to talk about top fits to end this video. I only have 2, actually 3, on my top fits for Will Levis. But with that, I mean, are we good to move on to CJ Stroud, or Nick, do you want to continue to talk about Will Levis a little bit?
I can't wait to talk about fits because I have one very obvious fit for Will Levis.
Can't
I'm
wait for that.
okay. If that's all we got to say about like who they are as a player, I'm 100% going to move to CJ Stroud, who I have ranked 2. Again, he could be 1 or 3 on this board depending on how he tested a combine, because on the field he looks a little more athletic than he lets on, especially if you watch the Georgia game. He ran all over them. He is also younger than the other 2, I believe. He's 21 years old. He's a little bit younger. His frame is 6'3", 218. There's no frame concerns. I would not be surprised if teams had him at 1. I would not be surprised if teams have him at 2 or 3. There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack with CJ Stroud, I believe. Again, like Bryce Young, really good on timing throws. He's got NFL arm and accuracy. He's supposedly an intelligent quarterback. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I think it's easy to say that when your guys average 5 yards of separation. If you look at the college football playoff against Georgia, they noted that Ohio State's wide receivers and playmakers average 5 yards of separation, which is by far and away the number 1 in college football. They average being wide open. And so that's what makes this evaluation much, much harder. And I think that's the problem with a lot of Ohio State quarterbacks is they're used to having 3 to 7 yards of separation on any given play. And Ryan Day does a wonderful job scheming up how to get receivers open, and he's got wonderful set of playmakers. I mean, right now they have Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Their running backs are good. Their offensive line has NFL talent. Paris Johnson Jr. is projected to go in the top 10. CJ Stroud is great when he has time in the pocket, which he normally does. He goes through his reads well. I think he's NFL ready. I would say that he's a plug-and-play starter day 1. I really would. I think he can thrive from day 1. If his line is good, at the very least. Like, if he falls to a team that has a decent offensive line, he's going to be set. His foot, when you're looking at his weaknesses, his footwork breaks down a lot. He looks like he's got fire feet in the pocket. He's not the most creative in the pocket. He doesn't have the escapability of Bryce Young or Will Levis. When he faces the blitz, he's not very good. He doesn't seem to pick up on blitzes very often, and he makes stupid decisions when he's faced with pressure, especially when it gets his face up the middle. From the edge, he's a little bit better, but when you're looking at pressure specifically up the middle, which a lot of NFL teams generate, especially the good defenses, he breaks down a little bit. Again, he's really tough to evaluate because he's constantly throwing to open receivers, like constantly. And my biggest thing with CJ Stroud is he's probably got the weakest arm of the 3. I think Bryce Young has a better arm than CJ Stroud does. Will Levis has the strongest arm of the 3 of them. And I'm going to go straight to the Michigan game. When you're looking at what what CJ Stroud looks like, his drop back is a little awkward. At that point, he did have a leg injury, so it could be looking at that. A lot of the things that CJ Stroud's problems are fundamental and pressure fit related. So if he gets a good coach that can teach him up how to actually drop back in a pocket and not have those fire feet, it's equivalent to what Peyton Manning looked like at the end of his career. I don't know if you guys remember the last season Peyton Manning played for the Broncos. He kind of had fire feet in the pocket. He didn't look comfortable a lot. Like, if you guys remember that. CJ Stroud looks like that regularly. It's a little weird. And he's willing to take risks, a lot of them, probably based on the fact that he's got ridiculous NFL talent with his receivers. Again, just addressing the Michigan game where they lost, he had 2 interceptions. I did note in this game that he's probably a better runner than he lets on. But again, it's one of those things that you look at and you have to be a little concerned with CJ Stroud. I think his best NFL comparison is Matt Ryan. Sneakily more athletic than he lets on. Very accurate. If you give him playmakers, he'll make the plays. Like Matt Ryan had Julio Jones immediately, Roddy White, Michael Turner, all of those guys. He had Tony Gonzalez for the early part of his career. If CJ Stroud falls into a situation like that, he very well could be very, very good. He definitely has to figure out some of those mechanical footwork issues, but he has Matt Ryan potential. I also will admit that, they broke down in the college football playoff semis, which is very reminiscent of Matt Ryan. So that's my last note. But I really like CJ Stroud. I do. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think it's important to note that as of this recording, he has yet to officially declare
Yes,
for
that
the
is
NFL
important to know.
draft. That being said, I think he has a lot of upside and his ceiling is very high. And if he is in the right place, and I think that's a very important part to think about, is the where he plays. Because there are a lot of teams that do need a quarterback that he would not fit. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I think that's very important to think about is that CJ Stroud, to really be successful, I think needs the right team to do so.
That's fair. Nick, what are your thoughts?
I was going to say, I've been looking at this. I've been looking through a few articles, reading about CJ Stroud a little bit more as I've been doing with all these players. Seen a few different comparisons. It's kind of all over the place. No one seems to have a specific.
I saw one that compared him to like a combined Jared Goff and Justin Herbert. Like he's more athletic than Jared Goff, but not as strong of an arm as Justin Herbert.
That's exactly what I saw. I saw that. I saw one that was Justin Herbert and Kyler Murray. I saw one that was Jared Goff and Joe Burrow. I saw stuff all over the place. The Jared Goff one was about the accuracy and the fact he can get the ball where it needs to go when it needs to go there. But he's Joe Burrow, but less aggressive in terms of athleticism. So I kind of got that one.
That's where my Matt Ryan comparison kind of came in because I think that's a good mix of all of those like kind of talents. And when I'm watching the tape, I look at Matt Ryan coming out of BC and remembering that, and I look at it and I'm like it looks like Matt Ryan when he came out of BC to me.
Yeah, and I saw another comparison here. It's not Justin Herbert now, but what Justin Herbert was when he came out of Oregon.
Yeah.
And if that is the comparison, I remember all of that talk and that they weren't sure if Justin Herbert could be a leader. They weren't sure if he could really mature into what he needed to be. Obviously, we're 3 years deep, and we know that he's done exactly that, and he's a coach away from winning a fucking Super Bowl. God forbid.
Dude, Brandon Staley needs to get fired. That's a different. We gotta talk about a separate video.
Point being, if that's the case, and that's what I'm seeing, and we're talking about the right team. If any of these three quarterbacks we're talking about fall to 15, I think the Patriots are dumb if they don't draft him. So, and I think I actually believe that.
I don't think they're falling outside of the top 5. I'm not going to lie to you,
saying
but I get it.
If they do, I would take any of these three guys over Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi for that matter. But based on what I'm kind of seeing and kind of looking at, at first I kind of read it like Russell Wilson but bigger, and just kind of how
I love that.
Well, when I first heard it, I was like, okay, Russell Wilson's not a big arm. They're not sure if he's going to translate. He was intelligent. He went to Wisconsin, but he wasn't really able to put the dots together, and his build didn't make sense. But it seems like they have learned from that. And although he's not the biggest dude in the world, he's not Will Levis, he's still able to move around the field effectively.
I mean, CJ Stroud's 6'3", 220 pounds. There's nothing there that would.
Dude.
Yeah, he's a presence. You're not looking at that dude at he's Russell Wilson and he's my height, but Russell Wilson's a couple inches taller. But
I'm looking at, I could see him dropping, not necessarily to 15, but just in general, I could see him dropping further than people think. And I honestly, I feel like people are starting to be like, whoa, Ohio State quarterbacks are not really doing it. And I'm not saying that means that Ohio State quarterbacks are all going to be bad. But so far, the last 6 Ohio State quarterbacks have all dropped out of the league or just not been it after a year.
I would say that Justin Fields is switching that. I mean, Justin Fields looked real good this year, and again, with his subpar line and, Darnell Mooney being a number 1 when he really should be a slot receiver, and that's no disrespect to Darnell Mooney, I just think his best fit is in the slot or as a wide receiver 2 on the outside. I think Justin Fields has definitely changed that trajectory in that conversation a little bit. Not enough to make it a non-factor because, Ohio State quarterbacks, but Justin Fields' success probably helps CJ Stroud a little bit. Do you agree or no?
I sort of agree. I definitely would put Justin Fields somewhere between 10 and 17. I don't know where. I would have to actually look at this.
Yeah.
But because of that, the problem is, does he look good because he's the only one on offense that can do anything, or does he look good because he's actually good and he's struggling to be the only one on offense that's doing something? That's for me. Like, does he look so good because everyone around him is crumbling, or does he look so good because he's actually that good and also everyone around him is crumbling? So that's what we don't know yet. So if he gets surrounded by good players and can't step up, then that's when we know how good he actually is. But right now, it's like, is he just a dude that's throwing the ball and people are catching it sometimes? Because he's running well and he had multiple 100-yard rushing games. Like the dude, he looked good. We also saw Lamar Jackson do that, but then we also saw Lamar Jackson with good people around him, and he, for whatever reason, can't win a playoff game or was only able to win one. And Lamar Jackson went from like number 1 guy in the league or number 2 guy in the league to like number like 5.
You could put like that. You could make an argument that he's somewhere in that 5 to 8 range. Yes.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? I mean, I personally think it's more of the latter with Justin Fields, where he's really good and everything else around him sucks. I will note that my 2021 class, the way I ranked them was Lawrence, Fields, Jones, Lance, Wilson, and that is looking like it's coming to fruition. That is looking like the actual ranking there. Zach Wilson absolutely blows. I told y'all he was going to blow. And Trey Lance, we just don't know about. Like, we just don't. He's been hurt. Like, I haven't seen enough of him to be like, yeah, he's 4 or yeah, he's 3. Mac Jones, clearly, his ceiling was limited, but his floor was down, so 3 right there. I will say that with any of these 3 quarterbacks, you're not getting a low ceiling. Like, any of these dudes can be developed into be a top 10, top 5 quarterback in the league. I don't think you're getting a low ceiling with any of these guys. Are we good with CJ Stroud? Are we good? Like, Nick, do you have anything else to add? Or
I agree with that point. I think that these all guys have huge high ceilings.
Yeah.
I think I get super anxious when I hear not a SEC big, like, when I hear Kentucky for Will Levis.
Yeah.
I get anxious. Because I wonder about strength of who he played. I know he played some decent schools because he was ranked, but I also think like these Ohio State, these Alabama, these Michigan, these quarterbacks that are in these top schools play top schools all year, every year.
Well, Kentucky is in the SEC, so they play Georgia, Alabama. Yeah, they play all of these guys every year, which is why when
they did play Georgia this year.
They must usually suck in the SEC.
Oh, they blow. They blow.
They do.
When I was evaluating Will Levis, you're looking at the talent of Kentucky. It's not great as compared to these SEC schools. So I looked at his games against SEC schools, obviously, but I put a lot more weight into, in the NFL, I don't think there's a large discrepancy of talent for the most part. Like, you're getting good players, unless you're at the Chicago Bears. Like, their team just isn't good. Like, the talent level in the NFL is a lot smaller than it is with college football. Like, the gaps between players are smaller, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I did look at all of those SEC games, and I'm like, okay, yeah, Will Levis obviously struggles, but I'm looking at the 22-person field vision, and there's nobody open. Like, of course you're going to struggle. You can't throw the ball when there's a guy blanketed by one dude. And so when I looked at Will Levis, I looked at some of the schools he played. Like, he played a game against Miami, Ohio, and he went 21 of 32 for 303 and 3 touchdowns. Like, that, I think that is when you're looking at comparables. And when he's playing Florida, it's 13 of 24, 202, 1 TD, 1 interception. But I note in here that nobody's ever open. And then I looked at the Ole Miss game where he's going 18 of 24 for 220 and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's really good. Ole Miss was considered to be a top SEC contender. And yeah, they lost that game, but it wasn't Will Levis's fault. I can tell you that right now.
Kentucky is really on the up and coming when it comes to SEC football schools.
Yeah.
Kentucky's really known for being the basketball school when it comes to the SEC.
Yep.
And they have really grown their football program, especially in the past couple years with NIL deals being allowed and whatnot. So, Nick, I think your anxiety when it comes to hearing Kentucky next to a quarterback is going to fade in the next year or two because, I think Kentucky's really going to kind of start shining the way Georgia has within the decade. Before Georgia was really that kind of low-end SEC school because Alabama always took the shine, and I think Kentucky's going to start doing that, as well as Tennessee. I think those two schools in the SEC are really going to start putting out high quality and NFL talent. So Nick, I don't think your anxiety will you'll have to worry too much when it comes to that.
It's there for now,
It's fair.
It's like even when I heard Duke for Daniel Jones, like I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
Duke,
no. ACC teams,
Duke.
they are not great. So
No.
like, they'll get there eventually. Like, other than Clemson, like obviously Clemson is the big exception when it comes to ACC schools. But like, listening to ACC schools putting out quarterbacks, especially, they're not the best. They'll get there maybe, but they're not the best.
Okay. Quickly ranking these quarterbacks. Are we all in agreement? Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis. Is there any like disagreement there?
I think that's about where I'd put it.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, that's where I would put it.
where they're coming from, where they're going. Yeah, I think that'd be.
And to end the video, I would like to just talk about the top fits. We're going to go in that order: Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis. Again, I think it's real close. Like with the combine and the way things go up, and we figure out Wonderlic scores and all that, that could change for me personally. Again, Bryce Young to me is a more athletic Drew Brees. I really like him. I don't necessarily think Bryce Young needs the best situation to succeed. So I think, Houston, Carolina, Seattle make a lot of sense for him. If he ends up in Seattle, he's going to succeed right away with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and the weapons that they have on offense. I don't see him sliding that far. I could see the Colts here. I think they like Will Levis and CJ Stroud a little bit better from what I've heard, which is fine. I think they like bigger quarterbacks with bigger frames so they can develop. I think that's fine. So for Bryce Young, my preference for him would probably be Carolina or Seattle rather than Houston, just because Houston is a team that has holes everywhere else. But those are my top 3 fits. I wonder what you guys think about that.
So I want to go with 2 fits that I think are actually a fit, and then one that I think would be a dream fit.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So and when I say dream fit, it doesn't matter what situation. I think that team would be where they would flourish the most.
Yeah.
So I agree with Seattle. I think if Carolina has the right coach, I think that might work.
I like Steve Wilkes. I'm just going to say that. I really
Yeah,
like
I don't know. I try not to judge coaches off of prior experience, no matter where it is, because you never really know until they get there. I assumed Brian Dable would be good. I didn't think he'd be this good, but I thought he'd get there. But I would say those 2 are my like good picks. I think my dream pick for him is actually you know what? I think dream pick, and this wouldn't happen, would be Denver. I just think that Bryce Young in Denver would really transcend everything that is wrong with Russell Wilson right now. So that's my like dream pick. But obviously it's not going to happen with contracts, stuff like that. But that's why.
With the way that I agree with the his like fits, he could easily fit in Carolina. He could easily fit well in Houston. But the one team that I think would really stand out for Bryce Young, and in the same situation with Nick's pick, it's not going to happen. But I really think Vegas. Well, actually, it might happen.
That's more plausible.
It's actually more plausible. But I think Vegas is a good fit with him just because of their team around him. They already have a star wide receiver. I think drafting a quarterback that high will give him a reason to stay around, because right now he already said he only wanted to be there for Derek Carr. So giving them a star quarterback will give them a reason to stick around at least a little bit. So
could you imagine those 2 getting traded together?
Oh my God.
The Raiders go full rebuild and just say screw it.
That would be insane.
I thought about the Cardinals doing something weird with that, with like D-Hop, Kyler, and that high
packaging.
Pick. Like doing something just absolutely absurd.
Well, I see.
You have to make the money. You'd have to make the money.
I was just gonna say. Yeah. I think it's a little less plausible with Kyler and D-Hop because of the money, but I would like to see that happen.
I'm pretty sure someone has $100 million cap space, or something gross.
There are a couple teams that have like 50, 60.
The Patriots have 70.
I think the Bears are the ones that have 100. I think the Bears have a
Giants are close. Space. Giants have like 50 or 60 million. So
the Patriots have like 70 million or 69 million. Nice.
So moving on to CJ Stroud, I actually have 4 that I think could really benefit CJ Stroud. One of them's more of a long shot. I think the Colts moving up for CJ Stroud would make a lot of sense. They've got weapons on offense. I mean, they could use an extra wide receiver, but Michael Pittman's pretty good. Jonathan Taylor being there. The Lions make a lot of sense for C.J. Stroud with the playmakers that they have: Jamison Williams, DJ Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamal Williams, fucking DeAndre Swift. They need a better tight end. I can't believe they traded T.J. Hawkinson, but I get it. I think the Lions would be like the perfect realistic fit for C.J. Stroud if they wanted to get aggressive and move off Jared Goff, which I don't think they want to do. I think Vegas is a good spot for C.J. Stroud, again, with Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, all of those guys. The more unrealistic one that I think would be very, very good for C.J. Stroud is probably the Jets.
Oh, damn.
I
wanted to say that. I thought I was going to be sneaky with my decision.
I really would like that fit as much as I would hate it for the Patriots, because I think C.J. Stroud would thrive with, Garrett Wilson, all the weapons that they have over in New York. Those are the four that I really see C.J. Stroud thriving in. Do I necessarily think these are where he goes? I mean, the Colts and the Raiders are probably the two most realistic. I think the Raiders out of those two is probably the best for C.J. I think he ends up on the Colts, though.
Man, Jake, you took my pick, man. I was really hoping no one would see him and I'd be able to slide him under the radar. But I do think the Jets are the best fit for him. Just because he will have that connection with Garrett Wilson already. And we've seen it already where quarterbacks and wide receivers who have that connection from college are succeeding with that connection in the NFL. So just having that already, I think, will make a huge step for his development. And also Salah is not a bad head coach either. He's already built this Jets team up to being a future contender.
I like Robert Salah a lot.
I think he's a great head coach, and I think the Jets are really the best fit. Although probably the least probable. I could see them trading up because they're what? They're 12th,
yeah,
something like that. So I don't think CJ Stroud's going to drop that far. So if they are going to get him, they have to be trade aggressive. Up. They have to be aggressive to get him, which they might be because they really are just a quarterback away, right? So they have a little bit of flexibility in trading some draft capital to move up. So I could see it happening, but if it's not the Jets, I could probably see the Colts doing it. I could see the Panthers doing it. I could even see the Texans doing it, but I think the Jets are his best fit.
Yeah, I actually disagree with the best fit.
Okay.
I legitimately think so. I agree with all the basic fits that were likely to happen because they're top of the draft. I think that the best fit, and we've seen this team go aggressive before, is actually the Miami Dolphins. And I hate it
Fair
as
enough.
a Patriots fan.
I like it.
Fair.
But I think utilizing someone like Tua or utilizing some of this, giving him Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
And Mike Gesicki.
You're giving him what he just had in Ohio State. You're giving him
that's fair.
the best weapons. And honestly, Jeff Wilson's been a great addition for them.
Yep.
He had a touchdown yesterday. And in general, what they have Raheem Mostert as well, right? So they have some good running backs. I think that ideal fit, is Miami. And I think that Miami is a good quarterback away, not a whatever Tua is, a decent sometimes.
Tua is a great timing quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. When Tua is on and he's actually anticipating, he's very good. He's a decent to average quarterback. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Moving on to Will Levis. Honestly, I think a lot of the fits are about the same. Not gonna lie to you, for CJ Stroud, because again, I don't think Will Levis transcends talent the way that Bryce Young does. The talent around him needs to be better for him to succeed in the NFL. I've got the Raiders, the Panthers, the Colts, and, just throwing in a surprising one, QB needy teams. Minnesota would be really good for Will Levis, I think. If you're looking at teams who could use an upgrade and or are looking for a quarterback of the future, I could see, Miami, the Jets, even if he falls to 15, the Patriots, I think, would be a really good fit for Will Levis because of the fact that they have a decent offensive line. I think that Matt Patricia made that offensive line look worse than it actually is. I really like the Patriots' offensive line, minus a tackle. Say they address tackle, that's a really good offensive line. And so, honestly, the realistic fit, probably the Raiders, the Colts, or the Panthers, but the outside shots looking into the last three.
Yeah, I want to say, so I agree with the realistic fits. Again, we're talking top 5, top 10, teams, a few teams move out. I think that the best fit in the whole league, and I'm dead serious, is the Giants. I legitimately feel like you're
Okay.
giving a more talented off the gate Daniel Jones to Brian Dable, a quarterback that has some similar references to Josh Allen, someone who already built up from a very raw prospect into who you consider the second best quarterback in the league. And I think that that is, in my opinion, the best fit. I obviously, just like the other best fits, I don't think it happens, but I think that the best fit is giving Brian Dable a more talented Daniel Jones. Not that Daniel Jones has proved a lot this year, but like more talented for sure. Uh, than that. That'd be crazy.
I also will say that Seattle would be a really good fit for him with his arm strength and other things like that with DK and Tyler Lockett. I think Seattle would be a good place where he could sit behind Geno for a year or two. Kyle, what do you think?
Agree with all of the more plausible fits. You guys have already said the more likely in top 5, top 10 picks, but the one who I think could do it because they drafted a quarterback last year, so this one is a little bit less likely.
I know what you're going with this.
However, I don't think the quarterback they drafted last year is going to be their long-term quarterback that will win them another championship. And I think this is going to be kind of another Josh Rosen scenario where this team drafted a quarterback, doesn't pan out, and they end up finding a more talented quarterback a couple years later. I could really see the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting him.
Interesting. I thought you were going to go with the Falcons there.
I threw you for a loop. So I think Will Levis fits well with the makeup that Pittsburgh has. I like Kenny Pickett. Just like I liked Josh Rosen. I just feel like they're both in a real shitty situation where they're just not the right fit for the team that they got drafted to. So I could see Pittsburgh moving up. I mean, I personally could see it. I don't think it's going to happen, but
Oh, I forgot to mention a point earlier. Any team that doesn't need a quarterback that Sean Payton goes to, any of these three quarterbacks would flourish. And it literally does not matter. Assuming that Sean Payton doesn't go to like a Denver or doesn't go to like a Chargers, any place he goes that can get one of these three quarterbacks, they will flourish, in my opinion.
imagine ideal scenario. I listen to a football podcast and they are all diehard Cardinals fans, and they brought up a point on their Friday episode that if they keep their draft pick and sign Sean Payton, they could literally go from bottom barrel disaster to a contender immediately.
Yes.
If they get Sean Payton.
They were a contender last year. Like, it's not like
Last year, but not this year. They were in trouble this year.
Yeah, but
I'm
that's
sorry.
'cause-
Who are we talking about?
Okay, I said so.
I was
Jake,
just saying
but
the
I
Cardinals
said,
were the
Oh, the
so
Cardinals.
Kyle's talking about the Cardinals, and I said that any of these three quarterbacks going to a place where Sean Payton is,
Yes.
they can go, is an immediate, like, yes, like they
Yeah,
are going
that's
to
a
do
fact.
well.
That's a fact.
Like if he doesn't go to
Honestly,
the Chargers or the Cardinals or a team that doesn't
if
need a quarterback, yeah.
if I'm Sean Payton, I want Bryce Young. He's the closest thing to Drew Brees that Sean Payton would have had. Again, any one of these three quarterbacks will work out with Sean Payton as your head coach / offensive coach. Like Sean Payton will make any of these guys great. If I am Sean Payton and I come back, I'm going to a team that I think has a shot at drafting Bryce Young. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I just thought of an outside contender to trade up for one of these guys.
May I ask who?
I actually think that the New Orleans Saints could make a huge push.
They don't have a first round pick. That would be interesting.
I think they trade and I hate this obviously, but I think that they trade Alvin Kamara. I think that they use some of these really good assets that they have, and they get up in there and get their quarterback or their head coach who is dealing with three bridge quarterbacks as his quarterbacks. To do something because James Winston is just not it. Andy Dalton is not it. He hasn't been on any of his teams. They're all okay.
What do you mean? He was once the best quarterback in Bengals history. What do you mean?
He was once the best quarterback.
Was once.
And now it'll be Joe Burrow forever.
It already is Joe Burrow. He's already surpassed what Andy Dalton did in 10 years.
Joe Burrow, in his own words, his timeline is from now until he retires. So to win a Super Bowl. So
I don't hate that, Nick. By the way, I don't. I think New Orleans kind of waits till next year to get a quarterback, but I don't hate them moving up now. Because they have the right pieces ish. Like they are just a little bit off. I don't hate it.
They're wasting so much talent.
They are. They really
Chris
are.
Olave looked good this year, but they're still wasting him.
Yeah,
they still have Michael Thomas. They're wasting him. They're wasting Alvin Kamara.
Did Michael Thomas even play this year?
No, because he's hurt.
He did, but he got hurt in like the first 3 weeks of the year.
Yeah, and he didn't want to play, so he just stayed out. And I don't blame him. The problem with that is, we could talk about this. If you were to give, I'm pretty much any other team, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Alvin Kamara, they are in the playoffs guaranteed.
And that defense isn't even awful.
Yeah.
I don't understand. The Saints should be halfway decent, and
they have a top 3 corner in the league. Maybe the number 1 corner in the league last 5 years, aside from Jalen Ramsey. Yeah, Marshawn Lattimore besides Jalen Ramsey. It's insane. And their linebackers are all veterans and good. It's the defensive linemen. They still have one of the best defensive linemen in the league. It makes Cameron Jordan's gross. It makes no sense. It really. I don't know how they're so bad this year. They should have won that division. And the Bucks are gonna get smoked tonight.
No, they're not. No, I'm 5 for 5 right now. Give me 6 for 6 with my Bucks pick. But
I can't talk about betting anymore. I lost full when the Vikings threw away my money. I
haven't bet anything. I'm just referring to our last week's podcast where I've picked 5 out of the 5 games correct so far.
I'm just losing full at the fact that the Giants lost me. I'm pretty sure around $400 this year by winning when they were supposed to lose and losing when they were supposed to win. Both sides.
Oh my God! All right. To conclude, we're gonna go with C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, then Will Levis. 1, 2, 3. I think it's pretty close. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are. I know that Kyle, you probably think it's a little bit farther down with Will Levis than I do.
Yeah.
But on that note, let us know what you would agree with. Let us know what you disagree with on us on the show. Again, subscribe, go follow the socials. High School Backups on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we'll see you later. Peace.